Hello, friends. It's Lisa Williams. I am the Chief Inspiration Officer here at Perfect Side Gigs. Welcome to our virtual interview series, Corporate to Entrepreneur. We are hearing from some of the top experts today that have made that leap from corporate to amazing business builders. They are helping others find their true joy and passion in life. We are so blessed today to hear from Mr. John Foley. This gentleman is a former Blue Angel pilot, flew in Top Gun, one of my favorite movies of all time. He went on to go to Sloan, fellow at Stanford School of Business, top-rated leadership expert, and went from working in the world of venture capitalist and now is one of the greatest speakers on our planet. What I love about John is that he teaches about gratefulness and has this foundation he's created called Glad to Be Here, and he's helping others find their true joy and passion in life. So, John, I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here, Lisa. I think we got something special for people, though, to start this, don't we?
We do. We are going to actually start with a view of John in his former life from a cockpit view. So, I'm so excited. Stay tuned. Here we go, friends.
In the Army, and he took me to an air show, and I saw some jets flying, and it sparked something in my heart. As it turns out, I went to Naval Academy and started flying jets off of carriers, but the Blue Angels were always that spark, because I asked my dad later, and it turns out the Blue Angels were at that air show.
So cool. Oh my gosh, John, that's so amazing.
Hey.
So I want to start by just asking you, you have consciously created several iterations of yourself. And I would love for you to share with our audience that may be feeling stuck in corporate America, have no idea what to do. What would you say about the joy that they will experience if they're brave enough to find that new iteration?
Yeah, you gotta reach for your dreams, right? And when you do that, and the metaphor I'm gonna use is when I was a child. I was 12 years old, and I saw my first Blue Angel air show. My dad took me to an air show, and I'll never forget that moment, because I remember looking up in the sky and I see these 6 magnificent blue jets. And I turned to my dad that day. I said, Dad, I'm going to do that. 12-year-old kid, right? Had no idea how to get there. Now, here's the interesting part. As an entrepreneur and as a corporate American, whoever you are out there, the first thing we need to do is we need to have a dream. You need to have a vision. And here's what's critical, though, I've noticed, is that vision needs to be here in your heart, not just your head. Too many of us just live up here, right? And if you're just living in your head, you're dead, right? You got to be able to find a way to connect the heart and the head. And we'll talk about some techniques on how to do that. But for me, the first leap that one has to make is first in the belief. It first has to be in your own belief. And then we'll build the plan. And there was a plan to get there. It took me 18 years, and 30 years or 18 years later, there I was flying a Blue Angel jet. You just saw it. You probably noticed I had a lot more hair back then, didn't I? That's what, I think if we did a business case study on speed and stress and G-forces, this is the end result, right? But yeah, I think the key to your question is, first off, to really capture what that joy is in your body, in your heart, right? And then we'll build the plan. We can talk about the plan. Too many times we get stuck in the plan before we really embed that dream in our heart.
You had, I saw a TED Talk that you did, and you talked about a man that came up to you, Nate, was it Nate Scott?
It was Nate, yes.
And he said, I remember you. And you, it sounded like didn't actually know who he was, but in fact, you unknowingly had been a mentor to him since he was a little boy. What can you share with our audience about planting those seeds in your life, and what mentorship has meant to you, and what it can do for them in terms of fulfillment as well?
Yeah, big question. First off, great memory. Yeah, Nate Scott. We actually have some photos. We'll share them with you afterwards. They'll be able to reinforce what we're just talking about. But the story, let me just give the story first, then we'll talk about that mentorship. But I think you're dead on about planting seeds. That's the key, right? How do you plant seeds in your own heart, right? This story was, I had right now, I speak, all over the world, right? So I speak to over 1,000 organizations in the last 2 decades, 10,000 leaders, over 1 million people, right? In fact, this morning I was just on with the World YMCA and their Secretary General in 120 countries as we're trying to pull people through the challenges that we're all going through right now, right? And one of the things that came up at one of these very special meetings I was at, someone came up to me, and it'll become obvious here in a second, and he put his arm around me and he says, Gucci, it's been a while since I've seen you. Now, first off, Gucci's my call sign. We can talk about that later, right? Okay. And I was a little bit like, what are you talking about, right? And then he reached down and he grabbed his cell phone and he showed me a picture, and we'll get you this picture. And it was a picture of he and I, but he's a little boy. He's sitting on my knee, all right? He was, I think, 4 or 5 years old at the time, maybe 6. And I noticed the picture because I'm wearing number 7, so that means I'm the narrator of the Blue Angels. That was 1990. It was in San Francisco. I mean, I remembered where I was. I don't remember that actual picture at all because he was one of 10,000 kids that I had a chance to meet. But basically, here's what he says. He goes, Gucci, I kept this picture above my bed as a little kid. And then he says, I kept this picture above my desk in college. And then his wife, who happened to be standing next to him, comes over to me and says, Gucci, you're not going to believe this. He's still got it up in the living room. But here's what will blow you away. That little boy is a current Blue Angel, Nate Scott. He became a Blue Angel. And there's a picture, and we'll get it to you, where we're arm in arm, both as a little boy and then, as an adult. And the thing that blew me away from that meeting was, first off, I don't remember the first meeting, it was only seconds, maybe 45 seconds, maybe a minute. And his father told me later, because we became really good friends, and his dad was saying that, he was scared. I mean, as a boy, little boy, little kid, little girl, he was scared even to go up. And his dad was saying, no, just go up and say hi, it'll be okay. And, I put him on my knee. But look at what that little seed that was planted in that little boy's heart, look what it grew into. Now, of course, there was a lot of watering. There was a lot of things that had to go on between that moment. But it reminded me of when I was a 12-year-old boy, and almost a similar story. I was at an air show, and I can virtually remember this. I mean, I feel what the smoke oil was, the smell of the smoke oil in the sky. I remember the awesomeness of the sound of the jets. I remember the crowd. And it's like maybe you first time been to their first concert or something, but it was visceral. It was real. And I was like, wow, this is something that I can do. And here's what's critical for entrepreneurs. And there's, the key on the story is that you don't need to know how yet to have that dream. We talked about that earlier. What's key is that you have the dream and you make it visceral, you make it real. Then yes, it's real important to have a plan. Okay. And we can talk about more of that, but yeah, that story is still so powerful, because here's why I think it's really powerful, is because we all are doing that every day.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't know it sometimes. We're just not aware.
It makes me think, there's some people, some of us are very blessed to have mentors in our lives naturally. What about the people that don't have that? How would you advise them to seek that mentorship?
Yeah, well, the first thing you got to do is put yourself in a position to have a mentor. So, get out, right? Get out in the world. I mean, follow your passion. If there's something that excites, I love to ski, right? So I'm snow skiing. I live here in Sun Valley, and at the bottom of the hill, I'll be in the resort, and bingo, you meet some people. Turns out I met the head of, I think, Allianz Life at the time, head of sales. And, we ended up, speaking. He got me started in the speaking industry. And, I've done thousands of events since then, right? But it started, and he mentored me. So the key is get out there, right? Also, usually when you're doing something you love, whether it's recreational or even in a work way, that's when you'll start to meet people who I think, can make an influence on you. Now, the second thing is you got to have some courage and ask. You just need to ask. I know. So very quick story on this. So I got out of the Navy. I did a full career in the Navy. I was in Stanford Business School. I just finished the Sloan Fellowship at the business school. I was taking, I think, my third master's in international policy studies. And I had the summer off, right? And so I was actually in Fiji. I said, well, shoot, I'm going to go travel for a little bit. So I'm in Fiji. I'm having fun. And after, I don't know about you, but after about 2 or 3 weeks of traveling, I need something else. I mean, I love traveling, but I needed something to accomplish, right? And I thought about someone who I had met years ago. He was the CEO of a company called American Golf Corporation at the time. They had like 300 and something resorts. And I called him up. And no kidding, I'm on a payphone. This is before cell phones. I'm on a payphone in Fiji, and I call him up. And I said, David, this is, John Gucci Foley. And he took the call, right? And so he said, how you doing? It's been a while. I said, well, David, I'm in between masters, and I got some time, and I've got a proposition for you. And he gets quiet, right? And I say, David, here's what I'll do. I'll give you a month of my services for free if you teach me how to run a Fortune 500 company. And that was my pitch, right? And there was dead silence on the phone. And about 5 seconds later, which is a long time on a phone call, right? I'm thinking, oh, this guy's going to blow me off. He goes, not only, yeah, hell yeah, that's a great idea. He says, can you be here next week? And I said, well, what next week? I'm in Fiji, David, don't rush this, okay? How's 3 weeks from now? I'll show up in 3 weeks. He goes, okay, it's fine. He says, I'll send you some information and we'll start. So I'm thinking, okay, this is cool. I'm just going to stroll in. I finally get home. There's a FedEx box waiting for me. And it's like got 4 binders, AGC 2000 strategy. This is back, like in the late 90s. I mean, all this work, and I'm like, didn't mean I was going to work that hard, but no, it's, and I show up, and you know what?
You ask for sometimes, huh?
Oh, well, you know what? It was beautiful though. He ended up giving me an office right next to his. I had 2 secretaries. They were his. They just borrowed them. And he basically opened up the world to me. Any important call, he'd just call me in, and he'd put me on silent. And he said, just listen to this. And then after we'd hang up, and he'd go, what'd you think? And I'd give him what I thought was my best knowledge. And he'd look at me and go, yeah, well, here's what's really going on. Bam, bam, bam. He had the ability to cut through and see the emis of any situation. And I just learned from him. And then he sent me out to his organization and said, go find out, what's really happening out there. And I would go out there and come back and give him my trust. And he gave me trust. I gave him trust back of what really I saw. Not, I wasn't afraid to tell him some of the ugly things too, not just what was going right. And wow, I mean, it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. So the question was, he's still a strong mentor to me, is don't be afraid to ask. And, the other thing too is if you have to give before you receive, and that's a faith-based concept, but it's true in business too. If you want something, like you want to learn how to run a Fortune 500 company, yeah, you could take 20 years and work your way up through that company. Or, you could do what I did, which is basically find somebody and say for free, I'll give you what I can, and hopefully you have something of value to give them, and then just see where it goes. You got to give before you can receive.
Absolutely. You and I were talking earlier about being scared versus afraid. And for those of you that are zooming in or tuning in later, we are in the midst of the coronavirus right now. We started the summit long before it. Who knew this would be happening? But I think a lot of us we have sleepless nights sometimes. A lot of people are doing that because they're worrying, or they're scared or afraid. I think people like us, we can't sleep because we're excited and we're thinking about ideas. But what would you say to those people right now, and tell us about that scared versus afraid concept?
Yeah, it's huge. And it's not just with what's going on today. And I know this will be played, a month from now with the coronavirus, but it's, fear is the real challenge out there. It's not the virus. Okay. The real enemy is fear, and fear itself. Right. So this morning we were talking about, we had the president of the World Health Organization kick off the meeting, and there was 3 speakers. I was one of them. And I brought this concept up about fear. Right. So what's the difference? First off, I always like to ask when I'm doing a lot of Zoom calls now, how many of you are experiencing fear out there, and at what level between 1 to 10? And people chat in all the time, and it's huge, right? There's a lot of fear out there. And so I say, okay, what's the result of fear? And watch it in yourself. It's stuckness. Okay. You can see it. You can see it in yourself. You can see it in companies. Heck, you can see it in nations right now. And here's my take on fear. Fear will feel like a force coming at you, something out of your control. We always perceive it as an external force that's out of our control. That absolutely is usually a misperception. We can talk about that later. But the point is that it causes stuckness, right? And so a lot of us, let's make it real, are fearful of leaving our jobs. Okay. I mean, how am I going to give up, whatever salary I got going right now, give up security? I got kids, I can't just, when you jump into the entrepreneurial pool, you're jumping in. I've started multiple companies. Okay. And you got to be all in, right? And you have to be prepared to make it for a while without revenue. It depends on what you're doing, right? But my point is, it takes guts. It takes courage. All right. So fear will keep you stuck. Fear will say, yeah, but, Now, what's scared? Scared's different, okay? Scared's the little hairs that stand up on the back of your neck. Scared says, maybe I won't walk down a dark alley late at night. Scared is about awareness. Scared says, before I just change my job and jump in, I have a plan, all right? Or I've somehow put together a relationship, collaboration. There's something that I've done. So to me, scared is good. When I was flying jets on and off aircraft carriers at night, let me tell you, when the sea starts to pitch, the deck is pitching, the sea stays big, the weather gets bad, you're low on fuel, it's easy to get fearful, okay? It's just easy. And what I realized is you have to have the ability to focus and block out distractions. And this is a very good skill for any entrepreneur or anybody out there, right? How do you block out the distractions, compartmentalize, and focus at the task at hand? For me, what I realized, what I could control is my own emotions. And that's hard for a lot of people. How do you control your own emotion, which fear is an emotion, right? So it starts with 3 things. One is you have to be situationally aware. This is good for entrepreneurs. Be aware of what's going on. In this time of crisis is actually a time of opportunity. All right. It depends how you look at it. Right. And second is you got to have a process and a plan. Okay. Let's be clear about this. All right. There's a focus and a process and a plan. And the third is that you have to have the ability to have confidence in yourself, confidence in what your teammates or whoever you're working with. And here's where it really kicks in: faith. Mm-hmm. You got to have faith. And faith is in a higher calling, something that is higher, stronger than yourself. That's where your strength comes from. You align those 3 things, bam, take action.
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned faith. I find this series has been I've had the opportunity to meet amazing men and women of faith, in something. It seems like a lot of you have that in common. Can you share what role a higher power has had in your life and your success?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I like you call it a higher power, whatever word you want to use, God, Allah, Jesus, Muhammad. I'm good with all of them, right? Because what I find is as I grow and as, I've been now in 6 of the 7 continents, we've spoken in 52 countries, when you start to see that people are actually more similar than dissimilar, that's what I've noticed. Okay. And we all have basic needs. We want to avoid suffering and we want to create joy and happiness. We all want that, right? But the key is you got to help others to get there. And that's hard. It's easy to say, but the key is if you want something, there's 4 steps. A very good friend of mine, Michael Roach, he wrote a book called The Diamond Cutter. I definitely get this thing. Okay. He says there's 4 steps, right? First thing you have to do is determine what do you want. And try to do that in one sentence, by the way. A lot of us, that's really hard, especially as, we're talking about corporate world, entrepreneurialism. What do you want, right? Okay, one sentence, all right? Once you can determine that clarity, and clarity matters, the second step is, find someone else who has a similar desire. Find another entrepreneur. Find another person who wants to have a successful relationship. I mean, whatever it is, right? Find them, all right? And then the third step is help them. Okay, come up with a plan. All right, meet for coffee once a week. I mean, just get them on a Zoom call like this. And I do this with all my friends all the time. I am spending as much time helping them right now as I'm trying to grow my company. We're pivoting. We're more digital. We got all kinds of programs out there. But what I'm doing is helping others first because I know that plants a seed in my heart, not just my head, that says, oh, then that success will come to me. And the fourth part, and the most important part, and this is the most fun one, and it's the one that's least done, by the way, rejoice. Okay, you gotta rejoice in the goodness that you do. And I have a technique, I call it my glad to be here wake up, my at night, but rejoicing waters that seed, and boom, you wait, it'll happen.
I love that. That's a great segue into one question I've just been plagued by this, and I'm curious your thoughts on. You have an incredible work ethic. You put blood, sweat, and tears into the training to become a Blue Angel, and your education, and the companies you helped when you were in venture capitalist arena. Why do you think it seems there's a disconnect sometimes when people move from corporate to entrepreneur? Sometimes they don't apply that same work ethic to their own dream, in my opinion. And so what would you say about the joy that they would have if they did that, taking those same things that they did? And how do you continue to have that work ethic to keep you propelling forward?
Okay, I love it. There's a couple questions I hear in that.
I asked you like 10 questions.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good. I love the work ethic part. What I want to really get to, though, you keep coming back to the joy of entrepreneurship. And I want to make sure we do talk about that because that's what will keep you forward. That's what will pull you through the tough times, right? And they're challenging. I mean, it just is. So I think as you were asking the question, 2 thoughts hit my head. We'll get to the work ethic second, okay? Because that's important. But the real thought that hit my head is there's really no balance in life, okay? That word, when you say balance, it depends on how you define it. Like I define scared different than afraid, right? But if you want to be an entrepreneur, and by the way, that's a calling. I think not everybody has the skills necessarily, right? And it's different too on corporate America. Okay, I'm naturally a very good entrepreneur. No, very good. That's a relative term. I enjoy entrepreneurs. Okay, I enjoy it. Corporate America, while I speak to it, I understand it. I was in the Navy. It's a huge corporation. All right, very structured. I know how to play in that game. Yeah, I can do that. But it's not where my joy is. Right? It feels like you're working all the time. Right? Maybe some of you feel like that. That's why they call it work. What I'm doing now is not work. This is a passion, right? Now, you can have a passion, But you also got to have a passion that makes money if that's what you want to do, or a passion that creates a lifestyle for you. That's necessarily not money, right? There's a way to create, I'm the and guy. I want to do both, right? It's not an either or. But back to the idea of balance is, as thinking back in my life, you know, the first thing I focused on, and it gets to this work ethic, was, okay, I wanted to become a Blue Angel. Well, heck, I had to figure out even what that was. And that was, oh, it's a military pilot. You got to become a fighter pilot. Oh, okay, that's cool. Well, how do you become a fighter pilot? Well, you know, go to the Naval Academy, or go to, you know, you got, there's a path, right? There's different paths. So once I figured out the path, and by the way, I got rejected 3 times, said I was not physically qualified. So that's another thing of entrepreneurialism. You got to have resiliency, but that's true in life. We were talking about that with the YMCA right now, you know, resilience, right? But the idea is, so I got a path. If I hit an obstacle, all it means is I got to find a different way. It doesn't stop my dream, right? You know, go around the wall, up the wall. Heck, if you have to go through the wall, but at some point you've got to have different options, right? It took me 3 options to get in. Once I got in there, then, you know, you got to keep working your way up. So I was very focused to get the shot. When I got the shot, and you have to be an instructor pilot first. I flew in the movie Top Gun, that kind of stuff. You know, now you just, here's the key. Just be yourself. Be authentic. You know, I mean, we all want, you know, someone that's authentic, right? And by the time you get to any chance in your life, you've earned that right. Just be yourself, be confident, be humble, you know, be vulnerable. You know, all these words, you know, we think that, oh, in corporation, I can't be vulnerable, you know, I'll get squashed. No, it's just the opposite, you know. Well, depends what corporation you're in, right? But the idea is, you know, there's strength and vulnerability, right? There's strength and vulnerability, authenticity. Be yourself, but be clear, okay? Be clear on what you want. And I had a recommendation letter written. I was applying to be a White House fellow way back when, and someone wrote up, John wears his heart on his sleeve. And I went, that's kind of cool. I never realized I was that way. I never realized it. But my
compliment actually.
Yeah. And so that's what I would say is, you know, the joy of entrepreneurialism. I will say that, you know, there are traits and there's skills that entrepreneurs should have and need to have. And they may be slightly different. You know, when I was in venture capital, what we found is pretty clear that an entrepreneur who starts a company usually has a certain set of skills and passions, and that's the ones I have right now. They usually can only take it so far. You know, when you're scaling things, at some point it gets to a point where those skills are not necessarily what's needed. The passion, the vision. It's more about, you know, focus, preparation, debriefs, and briefs. And so to scale a company, sometimes you got to hire a CEO who's not the founder. All right, and that does happen, right? And my point is that there's points in all our lives. So you just have to decide, well, where am I? What am I really naturally gifted at? And the way you can tell, and then I'll finish this one, is the analogy I like to use is it's like if you're in a canoe. Okay, you're in a canoe. I live in the mountains. I go out every day. In fact, right after this, I got my skate ski gear on. I'm going skate skiing. Okay, we still have some snow, but the key here is that are you in the river and you're paddling that canoe? If it feels like you're paddling upriver, that's a clue, okay, that something's not working, okay? And I don't know, maybe it's in your job, maybe it's the way you're doing it, maybe it's the people you surround yourself with. It's lots of different things. The point is, it feels like work. When you're an entrepreneur and you're in the joy, it feels like you're going downstream. You're riding the current. Now, does it take paddle strokes to avoid the rocks? Absolutely. Okay, you still need to drive the canoe, but it's a totally different feeling. And I think here's the cool part. We all go through that in stages in our life. It's not like you just hit it once and you're done, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I forgot to ask you, do you have children?
No, I'd love to someday. Still working on it. It's kind of fun.
So think about your future self. I think you'll be an amazing dad. If you couldn't leave your children anything but knowledge, no assets, you know, nothing but advice, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I'd share with them what I call the 7 perfections. All right, and I think there's a difference between the word knowledge understanding and wisdom. You use the word knowledge, which is great. Okay, it's important to have knowledge. I think there's a different level, what I call understanding. And understanding is, we have knowledge all the time. That's data coming in. Okay, I've got 3 degrees. Who cares, right? I mean, it's just knowledge. It's only important if you know how to use that knowledge, and that's where the understanding comes in, right? And that's what's valuable in business and in life, right? And then comes the wisdom piece. And the wisdom piece that's a little bit deeper. It's not knowing the how and the what, but the when, right? There's timing involved and the why behind it. So to me, wisdom's the key. That's what all the books I read now are wisdom books, right? Even though I just released my own Fearless Success book, which is fine, okay? But the last chapters is more about what we're talking about here, right? So I would leave them with 7 thoughts, what I call perfections. First is giving, all right? Learn to be a giver, not a receiver. And that doesn't just mean money, right? It could be giving your time like this right here, giving our time, giving your knowledge, sharing things that are important to you. We started a foundation, my wife and I, it's called the Glad to Be Here Foundation. I give 10% of all my fees when I speak to charity. In the last decade alone, we've been able to now, about 382 charities globally, worldwide, because we let our clients pick where half that money goes. We sponsor 55 kids in 55 nations. We're trying to sponsor a kid in every nation of the world, trying to bring the world together, right? So it's not just money. You're giving your wisdom, your solace. So first is I teach them to give, right? And by the way, that brings you safety and security. It's kind of ironic, right? The other thing I would do is be integrative. It's integrity, it's honor. It's I was brought up by my dad and my mom. My mom taught me love. My dad taught me integrity. Actually, he taught me both. But the idea was, be an honorable, moral, good person. Now, why do you do that? Because you see yourself. That's why you're planting your own seeds. It's the old Santa Claus is watching song. It's true. It's you. It's your own mind, right? So, and what that does is that actually drives inspiration and passion. If you're down on inspiration and down on passion, think about, well, what am I living the life that I'm meant to live? Am I integral to my own life, right? The third one is patience. Okay. And it's interesting because I say, why pick patience? Is because, fast moving world, make fast decisions. Heck, when I was a fighter pilot, I had my jets coming at me at 1,000 miles per hour closer. I had to, I was doing a mile every 4.5 seconds of closer. Fast decisions. Well, yeah, but there's patience that gets you through the long term, right? And that's where your power comes from and your strength, right? So the fourth one is joy, and you mentioned it. You keep going back to it. That's in the heart, right? And joy is different than happiness. I can be happy, but that's temporal. Joy is a deeper feeling. It's a purpose larger than self. That's what I'm striving for, to have joy in my life, every aspect of my life. The fifth one is this ability to concentrate, to focus, how you emanate as an individual, not just what you say, but what you do. How do you come out to the world? I like to say I'm an angel, by the way. We can talk about that later. And then the sixth one is wisdom itself. And the cool part about wisdom is it gives us freedom. Freedom from pain, things we don't want, but freedom to what we do want. And then the last one is a oneness. It's a togetherness. It's a compassion. It's an ability to bring everyone together. That's what my foundation, and that's what we are all about now. That's what Glad to Be Here is about, is bringing people together under gratitude, making a difference in people's lives. It changes the way you see the world, and that'll change the way the world sees you.
Yeah. Well, I am so glad to be here with you, John. I can't believe it. We are out of time. I have only gotten to ask you about half the questions. We're going to have to do this again. But before we end, I know that you had a complimentary gift that you wanted to offer our guests.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you go to gladtobehere.com, you can do this right away. And then if not, we'll also send it through you all so that people have access to this. But if you go to gladtobehere.com, you get a pop-up window. We've all had those. If you choose to and just give us your email, what we'll do is we'll send you what I call my Glad to Be Here module. Okay. It's going to be a very short video. of going deeper into this concept of glad to be here. And it's about gratefulness and gratitude and how it can change your life. I'll also give you an abstract and a little bit of a podcast. It's part of a series we have, but I just want to give it to you, right? And the cool part about it is I firmly believe that if you start to train your brain to wake up happy, to be grateful, to give, to live this gratitude, it'll change your life, and all your other hopes and dreams. Yeah, we gave you some techniques on how to get there. They'll start to be realized, because the way we see the world when we're in a grateful state of mind, it's the same area of your brain that lights up where perceptions come from. And it's why some people can see a glass as half empty or a glass as half full. And right now there's a lot of half empty out there, right? Fear. But when you change the way that you see the world, it's amazing. And that's where the creativity comes from, innovation. And that's where the joy that you've been asking about comes from. So happy to share that with everybody. Gladtobehere.com, sign up, and we'll get you what you need.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, John, so much. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Be sure you tune in next time to our series, Corporate to Entrepreneur, where we're learning from the experts on how they made their leap to find their true joy and passion. Bless you all in your life journey, and we will see you soon.
Glad to be here.